It's been a year and a half since I finished the build. Let's see how it's held up. I pulled it out of its tiny cave of a carport to inspect it in the sunlight. I found a couple things that could use attention, but was mostly happy to see that it is practically unchanged since the day I finished it. Since I never did seal it more than that one coat of Olympic deck seal, there were black stains on the trim and general stains everywhere that water could reach it from under the carport. The carport does have a few holes, and the only real problem was this tiny gap where I sealed the trim to the plywood. I made the mistake of using clear adhesive to seal around the trim on this camper when I should have used a flexible clear sealant. The adhesive was rigid when it cured, and a tiny bit of flexing affected the adhesive. So I pulled it into the backyard and set about sanding the entire thing. It's going to finally get a real coat of sealant. When finished the tool sanding, I did the small sanding by hand. I removed the door and sanded the jamb too. With the sanding complete, I vacuumed the entire camper and wiped it all clean with denatured alcohol. I learned over the past year of working with epoxy that denatured alcohol is an ideal cleaner to prep wood for sealants. I had just a few free days to freshen this camper up. I didn't have time to order the varnish I would have liked to use, so I decided to buy locally and see what the paint store would recommend. I wanted a clear, tough sealant while being open to using a new product just to learn more about the sealants on the market. The paint store recommended Sicken's Clear Gloss Wood Finish. However, they failed to tell me just how tinted it was. I was quite disappointed when I got home, popped the lid off, and realized it was amber tinted despite the can saying clear. I was genuinely bummed. I had hoped to keep the natural wood color as much as possible. Still, I went with it. It was very expensive. The guy said it would do a great job and time was limited. We had another kid on the way in a couple weeks, and I had to build another bathroom in the house so that we could move bedrooms when he got here. There was no time to wait around. 3 coats were recommended. I used a roller to make the first coat go on quickly, then brushed the next 2 coats on per the instructions. In the end, the Sicken stayed tacky for over a week after all 3 applications. It's now dry to the touch, but it still kind of feels like rubber. I made sure to seal each and every piece of unpainted wood. We got a crazy rainstorm as I was finishing up the first coat. The rain came in sideways under the carport. Already I was happy to see how the water beat it up with just 1 coat. Over the next 2 days, I brushed on the final coats. Each one required a 24-hour dry time before recoating. With 3 dry coats, a nice glossy finish shined well off the wood. The Sickens had grown on me, but now the camper had 2 dark colors on it, and I didn't like that. I didn't plan to repaint it, but it now seemed necessary. I started with white. Don't ask me why. You guys know I suck at colors. I made it to the second wall, and thankfully Brandy came out and quickly put a stop to that. She knows colors a little better than me. Given how much folks liked the green of my last build, I went to Home Depot to find green again, but this time I wanted sage green. Many of you have recommended it. After I picked a green that I thought would look good, I thought it would be more like sage. Turns out it's minty green, as one of the kids says. So we're gonna paint it again.
Did you pick another color?
You could hear the concern in her voice. Instead of buying more paint, I had a can of brown and added a quarter of it to the rest of the minty green to darken it. I will live with it this year and definitely repaint it next year. I just don't have the time or will to paint it again right now. Overall, I believe I messed up on the color big time. If you're an artist and somewhat local to West Virginia's Eastern Panhandle and you want to paint an outdoorsy/campy themed scene on this camper, message me at krabalcraft@gmail.com and we can set something up. I once made this image with Photoshop to express the possibilities, but I just suck at painting, so it's better left to somebody else. Now for more changes. These weren't necessary. We've decided to make this a local camping rental, and I wanted to make it less complicated for renters. We plainly don't use it enough. My bills are high enough to keep me always working, and Brandy's daughter's with her dad every weekend, and we don't like to camp without her, so we barely camp at all. In fact, the camper only has just over 300 miles on it. So I started the new changes by upgrading the door handle. The old one never worked well. It was a piece of junk. Without getting too fancy with the work, I just put some wood filler in the old handle's holes. I finished that off by sealing the trim again. I decided to eliminate the overly complicated and experimental Ryobi 40-volt battery setup and install a traditional 100 amp-hour lithium battery. This meant gutting much of the old stuff and rearranging the power area. I slid the water tank back a few feet also. This kept things separated better. All we have now is your DC panel over there, your AC panel. I left this inverter here just in case. And then we have the inverter down there. It's a lot more space, a lot cleaner, and I just got to go around and tack up the wires. See how the charger just screws right into the side of this battery? When we need to charge it, we'll just take the other end of the cord and plug it right into here when we're hooked to shore power. And that'll charge the battery. Later, I made these charger brackets to keep it off the floor. The final electrical change was moving the water pump switch to here. It used to be located behind the wooden access panel. Next, sliders were added to the AC to make it incredibly easy to slide in and out for travel and camping. And this bolt lock was added to keep the AC from moving while driving. It couldn't be simpler. Once all that was done, I inspected the entire camper for areas that could use a bit of flexible sealant. 99% of it was fine. If anything, I sealed more around the decorative mountain trim. That part wasn't sealed all the way. Here at the front hood, two boards had spread a little. I taped each side and worked some sealant between them. Super easy fix. This was the only place between the 1x10s that could have used a little sealant. If they shrink over the years, I'll add sealant. If it becomes a larger problem, I'll address it as needed. So far, things look great. Remember, these are tongue and grooved, so no water will make it inside. The Hillbilly hot water heater was eliminated for rental purposes. Right now it doesn't have a water heater. Maybe in next year's update video, I'll have a tankless in it or something. I've simply run out of time this year. How it worked with the flames being near the tongue was a little too risky for me with the general public. I'd like to do solar too sometime, but the budget just isn't friendly enough for that right now. And finally, a few months before, I added some 2x3 steel tube to the tongue. The tongue is C-channel stock, and I just felt like beefing it up a bit. I didn't film this modification then, but here it is. Overall, I painted 3 coats on the steel and bolted it on with 4 galvanized bolts each. If I ever learn to weld, I'll likely weld it on there. The camper will always live under a carport when not in use unless I can ever afford to get a large enough shop. It barely ever gets wet unless the wind is very high. It just sits there patiently waiting to be used. Renting is $100 a night. That includes delivery if it's under 15 miles. Any over will be extra. Unfortunately, renters cannot tow it due to insurance reasons. You can reach me at krabalcraft@gmail.com if you're interested. I am building another camper as we speak, so thanks for hanging in there with me. I wish my content didn't take months to build and cost thousands. It sure does make it a slow process, and I'm going as fast as I can, folks. I'll try to have as many builds as possible going, but right now this is max velocity for me. Thanks again.